Let's cross to Colombo now, and we are joined by Milinda Rajapaksha. He is the spokesman for the former Defence Secretary Gotabaya Rajapaksa and a member of the Sri Lanka People's Front Party. We are also joined by journalist and political commentator Rasika Jayakody. Thanks both so much for joining us. Rasika, let me start with you. Is this arrangement with Sirisena as president and Wickremesinghe as prime minister, is it doomed to fail? And if so, is there another alternative?
The political crisis in Sri Lanka has somewhat eased with the appointment of Ranil Wickremesinghe as the prime minister. There's at least a legal prime minister and a legal government in the country that commands the majority support in parliament. So that's a relief for many people. The issue, however, is far from being resolved. President Sirisena is still hostile towards the prime minister and his party, the UNP, and the tensions were clearly manifested in the speech by the president after the appointment of the new prime minister. However, the new cabinet was appointed today, this morning, and the president and the prime minister managed to pull it off together. We hear, however, that the differences of opinion between the president and the UNP over some names delayed the appointment of a new cabinet. We also hear that the president has axed some members of from the list of cabinet ministers at the last moment due to his personal reasons. So there are signs that the issue is still very much alive. And there are multiple indications to suggest that it's going to be a tough ride for the UNP. They have to run the government in an effective manner with a seemingly hostile president who has officially sided himself with the opposition. And this seems to be a serious challenge. However, the UNP seems confident that they can overcome this challenge.
Okay. Milinda, I mean, Rasika was saying that this political crisis now looks to be easing, improving, while we've heard others say it really marks the beginning of something worse to come. Where do you stand?
It's very important to understand where the crisis began. The crisis, the new political crisis of Sri Lanka is not something which started 1 month ago. That has been happening and showing different signals to people for almost last 3 years. When President Sirisena won the election, he appointed then UNP, now UNP leader, Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe as the prime minister. But from that day onwards, there was so many undemocratic process happen within the parliament and outside the parliament. Elections were postponing for years. The most importantly, the local government council election was postponed almost more than 2 years. Then the provincial council election is already postponed for more than 1 year. Then some bills were passed in the parliament in a very forceful manner, if you really look at how that happened. And some of the debates in the parliament were blocked. And even the opposition leader position was not given to the joint opposition. It was given to another party. So there were many issues people were facing. And if you really look at the democracy was facing. So that was the crisis. Why we had to walk in 1 month ago and Mr. Milinda Rajapaksha had to take over the premiership to find a solution for this existing crisis. That is what President Sirisena spoke at his speech. He was clearly told he negotiated with Prime Minister Wickremesinghe to solve those problems, but no one supported him. Then he discussed with the other leaders of the UNP to solve this issue. No one supported him. So he left with the only solution of inviting Milinda Rajapaksha and his team to again get into the premiership. And of course, then all work together towards dissolving the parliament, because that is what we all believe in, going back to the people and get a fresh mandate and then see how we are going to govern the country.
Okay, but that's
in this kind of crisis, what we believe that is very, very important, we go back to the source of the power, the people of the country, and get a fresh mandate from them and ask from them who should be governing the country, in which way, under which policies.
But because dissolving the parliament, according to so many, was actually in violation of the Constitution.
Yeah, that is what we realized. That is what we realized. So that is why we got back from the government. That is why Milinda Rajapaksha resigned from the parliament and allowed President Sirisena to continue the government with UNP
Okay,
government,
so now
where the cabinet was appointed this morning. But we gave a try. We worked on behalf of people, and we tried our best to give an opportunity for people to give a fresh mandate.
okay.
Unfortunately, which didn't work out.
Go
Can
ahead,
I interrupt,
Rasika.
Yes, so we have to understand how this crisis occurred. Yes, as Melinda said, it didn't happen overnight. But President Sirisena and Prime Minister Wickremesinghe came to power on the promise of delivering good governance and transparency. That was the foundation of their mandate. They carried out certain reforms but backtracked on several key promises, such as the total abolition of executive presidency and post-conflict accountability. President Sirisena especially took control of the SLFP and got engaged in toxic party politics without being the neutral executive president he promised to be. Now, when he ran for the election in January 2015, he promised to be a neutral president who will usher in reforms. But that did not happen. Within just a few days, he became the leader of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party and started engaging in party politics. So
Okay.
as a result, over the past 5 years,
But
the
yeah,
relationship between the president and the UNP turned bitter and hostile. Now, Melinda talked about postponing elections. Now, the person who was in charge of holding elections was Mr. Faisal Mustafa, who was a member of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party led by President Sirisena. Even at this point, the man who was personally overlooking the electoral process is with President Sirisena. The UNP did not oppose holding provincial council elections. So this argument does not hold
Okay.
water because the President
so how
Sirisena, who
this
is
is
responsible
yeah
for this
this yeah I
issue.
mean taking up from Rasika, this very important to understand in when you look at the new existing crisis of the country. This history is very important. Now, when the presidential election came in 2015, which then President Rajapaksha decided to have the presidential election 2 years in advance, because at that time he thought we have to again check the people's mandate. Even though he had 2 years to run, he decided to go for the election and see what people want to see. That is how the democracy works. But at that time, unfortunately, UNP hijacked the general secretary of President Rajapaksha's party, where we all were belong to.
Let me
So
ask
how
you
are you
something else,
going to?
though. I don't want to.
Yeah.
I mean,
So how are?
the politics are obviously extremely complicated. I mean, there are even accusations that Ranil Wickremesinghe and his allies paid for MPs to vote no confidence against Milinda Rajapaksha. Just allegations that we've heard, obviously nothing proven. But let me ask you, please, where this leaves the Sri Lankan people at this point. I mean, it seems to prove that, first of all, there are no real friends in politics. People present themselves as rivals, and then ideologically or otherwise, and then only to become allies again when it serves their political interests. So where does that leave the people of Sri Lanka? Do they have any real trust in their leaders right now? Rasika, let me ask you as an analyst.
You have to look at it in the current context. I mean, people were sort of frustrated with the recent political crisis. They needed a stable government in the country. I mean, the political crisis broke out not because the ruling party didn't have a majority in parliament, because the president, the executive president, did not like the prime minister. It's a personal issue, as we understand. So the first priority of the new government is to find money to meet the government expenses for the next financial year. So the new finance minister will present a vote on account to parliament tomorrow in this regard. So that will be some sort of a relief for the public, because they want their salaries paid. I mean, that's the first requirement. But going forward, however, UNP may run into constant clashes with the president due to strong differences of opinion between the two groups. And this is why the UNP has to decide how the party is going to deal with the president and avert the recurrence of a political crisis next year. Otherwise, there will be no political stability in the country, no foreign investments will come, and the economy will not move ahead. So these are the things that the UNP must take into serious consideration. The people, from the point of view of the people, they need stability, but the stability is something that all political parties should work towards.
Right.
And also, I must respond to Milinda's argument about elections. Yes, elections are necessary for democracy, but also you have to respect the mandate you get from previous elections. Now, in 2015 August, people voted the UNP into power for a period of 5 years. So you have to respect that mandate. You have to respect the timelines. The elections should not be manipulated to suit the political agendas of certain political parties. That's not how a democracy functions.
I mean, Milinda, do you accept that argument?
No, I think the democracy of this country was brutally attacked when the 19th Amendment was passed at that time. The 19th Amendment says that you can't dissolve the parliament, or the president can't dissolve the parliament before, or otherwise 2/3 willingness is needed to dissolve the parliament. If parliament is to dissolve before 4.5 years. Now the problem, that is where the problem comes in. When country is not moving forward, when the people's mandate, which was given before, is not respected, when the country is going through a real political crisis due to the different clashes between the political parties and especially the leadership of the government, we saw very clearly president and prime minister were not working together. That has created so many issues in other ministries, and also the governance and also the administration of the government. In that kind of situation, it's very important, from the name of the democracy, you give people an opportunity to give a fresh mandate. And now that has been blocked. Now when that has been blocked, you left with the same people, you left with the same old routine, you left with the same old parliament to govern or run or administer the country. Now that is where the problem is. Now, even though new government, Prime Minister Wickremesinghe sworn in and the new cabinet was appointed, the real issue started again. Now again, president is not supporting the government, and the parliament doesn't have any faith on the president. So this issue will not take us anywhere.
Okay, Rasika.
That is something we have to solve.
Milinda, I'm going to have to interrupt you. We're very, unfortunately, completely out of time for this segment, and I would like to thank you both for joining us so much on this edition of the Newsmakers.